Well, you know what? Welcome today. Today is the fantastic day because we are at the Energy Newsbeat podcast, and we've got a really fun episode today. I've got one of my favorite topics, and that's ESG. We got to take care of our planet. We got to take care of our people, and we got to do it responsibly. And we have Dr. Andrew Parker, and he is the ESG I think head of ESG. You'll have to fact check me on this here in
Close
a minute.
enough. Yep.
Close enough. Dr. Parker, welcome. And we are so glad you're here.
I appreciate the invite to be here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, fantastic. This is so much fun. I get all excited about taking care of the planet, the disproportionately impacted communities, making sure everybody has the lowest kilowatt per hour in there, and oil and gas, natural, wind, so it doesn't matter. We got to do it. And you guys have some you're over at SPL. Let's kind of talk about SPL for a sec, if you don't mind giving me a little bit of background on what SPL is.
Yeah, I think it's easier to probably tell you what we don't do, because over the years, we've really evolved to do so much more than what I think SPL started, which was in the laboratory business. And now we really touch the entire hydrocarbon value chain from the wellhead all the way to the refinery. And we do all sorts of services, from measurement practices on a well site, calibrating flow meters, to collecting samples and doing complex analyses in the laboratory for product quality testing. We have our own allocation service now that we do, production allocation for various customers, and getting more and more into the finished products testing. So we have a fuels laboratory in Arlington, Texas. So we touch it all.
That's good. So cradle to grave, touching on ESG in the oil and gas industry. And how does that impact the energy industry? I mean, you said you're doing everything to everybody, right? Are there other markets that you're hitting?
Yeah, so I mean, oil and gas will always be our core markets, but there's certainly tangent markets, and part of our ESG strategy, I think, is to start to branch out into some of those markets where there's a lot of overlapping synergies with markets nearby. Like, for instance, agriculture is a very logical market for us because a lot of the geography overlaps with oil and gas. So there's certainly new opportunities that we're always looking at and evaluating what makes sense for our business and our strategy going forward.
I got a few questions for you. Okay, you went to Texas A&M and you're a PhD. Tell us a little bit about your background in ESG, because that'll lead us right back into the rest of the SPI story.
Yeah, so it's kind of a roundabout story. I like to say it found me more than I found it, because I went to CU Boulder and got an undergrad in geology, and followed that up with my PhD at Texas A&M. And I thought I was going to go into academia. I wanted to be a professor. I thought they had the coolest jobs in the world, right? I mean, you set your own schedule, and you get to research what you want to research. And, I got there, and a few years in, which, first of all, going from Boulder, Colorado to College Station, Texas is not an easy transition. If you want to talk about being culture shocked within your own country, it was quite the transition after 4 years in Boulder to go to College Station. And, I was like, what is fish camp? What are yell leaders? It was almost a foreign culture that we had to acclimate to, plus the heat, and it was wild. Fell in love with A&M, but just realized that being a professor was not the career path. But I studied climate change, right? That's what I did. I have a PhD in oceanography formally, and my dissertation centered on paleoclimates, understanding how past climate change, and how that can be placed into context with today's climate changes. And so, I have this real extensive background in climate science, and I moved back to Colorado at the end of my degree, and I thought, certainly someone wants to hire some new PhD graduate that's a hot shot in climate science. And I sat around for about 6 months, really angry that was not the case. And finally, this small little family-owned laboratory in Windsor offered me a job that I took, and the rest is history. So, going back to ESG, I think with I'm kind of have this unique perspective where I have a very detailed knowledge of climate and climate change. And ESG just kind of is a complementary passion to what interests me, and doing good by the environment, but also promoting the industry that does a lot more good than people think.
Oh, I was not expecting that kind of an answer. And I absolutely love the whole roundabout twisting in there, because that's very unique. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was kind of it's kind of one of those things where, I actually was really anti-oil and gas starting out my PhD. A lot of kids in geology went the oil and gas route, and it was like, man, I just don't want to be a part of that, right?
Right.
And then I did an internship with Shell in 2013 that opened my eyes to what oil and gas companies do, and I realized they're not really oil and gas companies anymore. They are integrated energy companies that are very much focused on the energy transition, even 10 years ago. And so that was really, for me, what changed my perspective on getting into oil and gas.
It's funny you mentioned Shell. Boy, that thing this week with the activist investor kicking in. I write for other folks as well, and they said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I think it's a mistake. I think that it's going to do more harm to the shareholders, stockholders, and all of the things. Shell will be able to migrate to a true energy company easier because they need the profit from the upstream and keep the chemicals going and everything else. And if they're this is just my unprofessional opinion. And if they're ESG efficient to go to green, you think that they would be running their other side of the business to the best they possibly can. So if he peels off the natural gas part and then he peels out all of the other stuff, they're not going to be able to afford to go that way because of the wind and the solar. And that was what I was writing for these folks. And so I hope I'm on the right track. If
it's completely counterproductive what happened on Capitol Hill to progress, right?
Yes.
I mean, I wasn't around in the 70s, so I don't, and I didn't work for these companies. So I'm not going to sit here and say they didn't withhold information 50 years ago. But as far as the present day conversation is concerned, you would be hard pressed to find one oil and gas producer that doesn't have some kind of climate impact statement on their website. Right. We were just talking on, right. Yeah. We were just, we had Chris Wright on the Energy Strong podcast not too long ago. And he said, we know climate change is a thing. We know CO2 emissions are a problem. It's not like, I don't understand this whole, we're hiding the science, we're misleading the public, because it takes about 2 clicks from the homepage of any super major to find their environmental, social governance, impact statements, their strategies, their transparency on the topics, their commitments to net zero by 2050. And so to watch what happened on Capitol Hill is so counterproductive to the process. And I can get off my high horse here on this, because now you got me going, right? But like, I mean, the oil and gas industry is going to facilitate the energy transition, whether people like it or not. Right? Whether people like it or not. You can't make a solar panel or build a Tesla without oil and gas. And why there's not more cross-pollination between the oil and gas industry and environmentalists and activists baffles me. But when you see what happened yesterday, it's no wonder.
I've got a nice little research team, and I think about 4 or 5 months ago, we found out that California was actually using more coal now than they were in the past. And now you take a look at the whole world problem started because everybody started printing money for all of the COVID and new power. 20 years of bad energy policy have now turned into a disaster for the ecology.
Right.
If we have a good plan, let's use nuclear, let's use renewables, let's use wind, solar, let's use everything to get the lowest kilowatt per hour, save the world. Let's move to energy that way. You're going to need both of them. you and I are going to get passionate here in just a minute, run down the road and start solving all the world's problems right here.
Well, but it really, it frustrates me because I try to be open-minded and see both sides. And sometimes it's just really hard to do that because, California is a great example. They're using more coal. They also import the most oil and gas from overseas, where the reality is there is nowhere in the world you can get oil and gas produced more responsibly than the United States. And so, you add the hypocrisy to yesterday where, the administration asked OPEC to please put out more oil, right? Where, okay, hey, US, I'm going to put bans on the permits, but I'm going to ask OPEC to drill more. And then when they say no, now I come crawling back to the US industry and ask for your help. And then you turn around 3 weeks later and you compare them to big tobacco. It's like, what is going on here? Because you can't, nowhere in the world is it produced more responsibly than in the United States. And anything, the United States industry should be promoted and encouraged to produce more, because ultimately it's a product. If we don't produce it, someone else is going to do it. And it's better for the environment to do it in the United States.
National security, Dr. Parker, you brought up just such a great point. And that is that Saudi Arabia and Russia don't care about us. And we got to get our own oil. We got to get our own stuff. We can't be reliant on them. And I do a lousy Putin godfather, by the way. So if I go, hey, I'm going to pump all the natural gas and oil, I cannot do that. I sound more something else. But you did hear that Saudi Arabia and Russia are even now looking to form a OPEC for natural gas.
Yep.
Tell me that isn't so valuable for us, because we're not going to have the world thing over there, but our natural gas in the US, out of the Haynesville, going into Cheniere, going out the Gulf, is all being bought out of Asia. And you are dead on right. Well done. I mean, this is cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, to your point on natural gas and coal, right? I mean, burning natural gas is about 50% less CO2 emissions than coal. Even here, I live in Colorado, even here in Denver and in Colorado, a state that prides itself at being at the forefront of being green and right, we have NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory here. And the electricity generation in Colorado by coal still exceeds the national average. Isn't that like a mind-blowing statistic, right? That no matter and you touched on it earlier, right? California and the use of coal is actually increasing for the first time in how many years, because we're starving ourselves of energy. And the energy crisis, I mean, as we talk, it's getting serious, right? Look at what they're paying for natural gas in Europe and in Asia right now, the premiums, and what's going to happen this winter to people who are paying 20 to 50% premiums on the required energy that they need. It feels like there's no energy transition strategy right now. That people, you can electrify the hell out of everything.
Yes. Cars,
grills, houses, I mean, airplanes, right? United just made a commitment to buy electric aircraft in 2029. And you can electrify it all, but if what's the point if you're still powering those batteries with coal or something else? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it's just going to get worse until we have a more coherent energy strategy. And what comes out of COP26 this weekend, I think will be, and in the coming weeks will be really interesting to see what the nations at the table walk away and say, but the reality is it probably won't be anything that we haven't already heard before, right?
What's your take going into this conference for them next week? What do you think is going to happen? And then I'd love to follow up with you afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when politicians come together, I always have low expectations. So, I mean, I don't expect a whole lot, I mean, one of the biggest emitters in the world, the biggest emitter in the world, China, they're not showing up. Right. So I'm sure they're going to, reaffirm commitments. They're going to reaffirm Paris. They'll come away with some other, newsworthy, titles. But at the end of the day, I still don't think there's going to be a reasonable strategy set forth. It's just going to be, hey, we need, 2050, 2050, 2050, we need to be net zero. But I don't think there's going to be anything substantive coming out of it. And if there is, great, but I hope I'm wrong personally, but I just, my expectations are low.
What's kind of funny is I think next week is also OPEC's meeting, and Saudi Arabia has already said they're not going to be producing anymore because they want the high price. And so begging for, you mentioned the administration begging for oil is pretty stupid. So
yeah, I think one of the things I'd like to see, I mean, if I had a wish list, is I'd like to see more alignment between the policy and some of the standards that are starting to come out in that businesses are adopting, right? So I'm thinking of SASB and TCFD. I'd like to see climate policy alignment with standards, because I think that's where, companies are going to follow these standards. And if those standards are complementary to what the climate policy is and the goals we have for 2050, I think you'll start to see real change. But until that happens, and there's still this disconnect between policy and private companies and what they're doing, I think it's going to be hard to really, there's still going to be that fuzzy space.
Dr. Parker, those are outstanding points. And that you brought up about three different things, and you talked about Liberty and Chris Wright, your podcast that's coming out. He is one of the best talkers about energy, he believes it. He's passionate about it. And he talks about bringing people out of poverty. And his team over at Liberty is flat ESG. They bleed ESG over there. And I love it. He made his whole team line up with frac fluid, and they all drank it. Now, you got to believe in your product when you said we're ESG friendly. But you sit back and take a look at the disproportionately impacted communities, and all the energy policies you just mentioned have wiped out a lot of our companies and our communities. The disproportionately impacted communities and countries don't deserve these policies.
No, they don't, and they need their fair chance to build infrastructure the way we've been able to do it. And Chris and Liberty are, I think, a real great example within the industry of how, I memean, even before ESG was a thing, they're working on, they have their e-fleet now, right? Mm-hmm. And I think they speak to, it's just a subject. They're a case study in what the rest of the industry is doing, which is you don't really need policy to push innovation in this space, because again, we're not hiding anything, and the innovation's been in the works for years and years. I mean, they didn't just do the e-fleet this year, right? Because they had ESG pressure. Right. That e-fleet's been in the works for years. And so, Chris and Liberty, it's a great company. Chris is such a great advocate for our industry. He has some great experiences, some background I didn't even know. I mean, he went to MIT. He's worked on nuclear fission. He's spent a lot of time with a lot of different energies, and he's a great advocate for the industry.
Oh, he is such a cool cat. I really love, and all the folks over at Liberty, great management, great numbers. When we talk about the technology that you just mentioned with Liberty, technology coming around the corner is going to be, I think, so critical for clean energy. Where you mentioned SPI being so critical into the energy tech space, being able to make that kind of transition. We're going to have energy tech investment heavy in order to make this transition. What are your thoughts on that?
So are you talking like SPL specifically?
Anything you want, because I
mean SPL. So at SPL, I mean, we're a digital company, and we feel like we're really well positioned to be drivers of that, because there's great technology out there on the market right now, and there's so many amazing things that you go like, man, why didn't I think of that? Or you think about it, and then the next day you see a headline, someone's already thought about it, right? And so I think right now you're seeing a lot of technology come out in the emissions realm, right? Because emissions has all the focus right now, right? Because of climate change, everyone's like, we got to figure out how to track our methane. We got to start reporting our GHG emissions. and we got to find ways to reduce our operation and become carbon free as quickly as we can. That's getting all to play. I think ultimately down the road, a big thing you're going to see, and it's already becoming a bit of an issue, is water. And you're going to see some real big technology, I think, come to market in the next few years related to produced water, especially in the West, right? Think about Texas, think about Colorado, even North Dakota is in a huge drought. And what do you do with the produced water? Do you recycle it? You're going to see, I think water becomes a real big play in the next few years. But as far as emissions goes, SPL, we're a digital company, and we really think of ourselves as a not just an OFS company, but we're an OFS tech company. And we're real excited to actually start a partnership with a great emissions technology called Clean Connect AI, which is an autonomous, it's really an autonomous HSE, an ESG platform that does continuous emissions monitoring and so much more, right? Gate guard, PPE, tank level, non-invasive tank leveling. Yep. So it's going to help people reduce their emissions. It's going to help people monitor their emissions. It's going to help their operations be safer for their people. And we cannot be more excited to take it to market.
You know what's cool? You're just sitting there, we go environmental, social, and governance. The governance part has been driving me nuts with the ESG. There's no accountability. Without accountability, there is no ESG. Dr. Parker, you have just described accountability.
Yeah. I mean, having the accountability piece, I think, is what I think oil and gas has lacked. For just the transparency piece, right, is kind of lacked in recent years. Going back to my conversation with Chris Wright, one of the mistakes the fracking industry made at first was not sharing what the chemicals they were using to frack were, right? Because it was industry trade, is what they said. But then it became a mystery to people, and people look at things like oil and gas, and you're drilling this really deep hole and putting a bunch of chemicals, and it sounds scary, right? So transparency, I think, will go a long way to reinventing and taking back control of the narrative for the oil and gas industry. And that's what Clean Connect does.
You know what's kind of funny is the green movement has penalized the E&P companies, the public E&P companies, and saying, hey, if you're not going green, just like you mentioned with Shell, they're already trying to do that, but yet they're penalizing them. And so, it seems like there's a little bit of a hypocrisy with folks that want to go green, but they're not thinking about that kind of stuff.
Well, don't get me started on my net zero spiel, because to your point, right? So the thing that gets me going. So what just happened earlier this year, Shell loses a case in Dutch court that says they've got to reduce their emissions by 50%. By 2030. Crazy number for a company like that. And there's only one way to do it, and that is sell assets. So what do? A few weeks later, they put the Permian up for sale.
Yep.
Right? So the strategy is not get it out of the air, it's get it off the books, right? And that's what policies like that are doing, is like, we should be encouraging these companies to continue to pursue implementation and development of technologies that actually take CO2 and methane out of the air, rather than play hot potato through asset acquisition with other producers, because those emissions didn't go away. They're still there. I think who bought those? I think it was it Conoco or someone like that bought them. Those emissions didn't go away. They're just, and the same thing that happened in Alaska. BP sold a bunch of assets up there and gave them to Hillcorp. And it's get it off the books rather than get it out of the air. And it accomplishes nothing for the environment.
So clean energy tech, let's take all the carbon out, let's put it back in, let's do all those kind of things. That's more important in a good environment that you can measure, get back to the investors. I mean, that's exactly your hot button. So I'm sorry for poking you, but you're fun. I mean, that is cool.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that's why I think as an organization, we look at ESG and we know that people and producers are going to start to gravitate towards like-minded partners, right? So producers have really been in the last few years conscious about ESG, and this year obviously hit a fever pitch. OFS companies, I think, are still a bit slow to the game. And so we recognize that and really said, we want to plant our flag in being partners with our customers, as we've always viewed it, to help them actually create and implement real change in their operation. And so we're real excited about the direction we're headed in this space.
When you sit there and take a look at SPI, your leadership in the ESG and in the market, I want to switch gears a little bit with you. And I have enjoyed Energy Strong for so long. And it is so cool. Energy Strong. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on over in Energy Strong? It's such a great organization.
Yeah, Energy Strong is an incredible organization that I've been really fortunate to be a part of for the last year. I mean, people like Luke Coates and Dustin Case, Jack Hamlin, who were really at the forefront at getting Energy Strong off the ground, and really born out of the Proposition 112 debate in Colorado over safe setbacks. And what they've built is now approaching 80,000 registered members through the website. I think we're going to crack 80,000 followers on LinkedIn this week or next week. And it's just become such a powerful advocacy tool to really get out. And I think some of what we're trying to do now is not just rally the base, but extend that olive branch and get some, membership and some people involved who aren't necessarily directly related with the industry. And so it's a great organization for the industry.
And so your new podcast series, tell us about what your new series coming out is.
Yeah. So the new podcast is, it's out. We've done 3 shows so far. We've got some great guests coming. So Chris Wright is joining us here in one of our episode 4. We've got hopefully a few other people lined up that we're real excited to talk about. And so myself, Patrick Schauer and Kat Galloway are the hosts. And the whole idea is to just, again, content generation and having real balanced interviews with people about, topics and highlight the good, right? Like that's what we really want to do is highlight the good in everything the industry does, from not just an energy equity position, but all the good we do environmentally and all the innovation that's happening within the industry, and all the people that are like-minded in that respect, that, we enjoy the environment just like the next person. And so bringing that perspective is what we're really hoping to accomplish.
I heard, I got to hear the intros on these, and Kat was doing really well with her first guest and those. Was she nervous on her first podcast?
We were all nervous on our first podcast. I think I was telling you, that first episode, we probably did the intro like we did it like 10 times, I swear. And it was all very more unnatural than I thought it was going to be. Yep. But that's, hey, episode 1, right? And already we're a few more episodes under our belt, and we're more comfortable. The chemistry is coming out now, and the conversation's more natural. So yeah, but we were all really nervous.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're actually very smooth, very eloquent, even though you're from Texas A&M, and everything else. I'm very surprised that you were having a problem in that first one.
Oh, well, you're too kind, because I hate my voice, and listening to it, the first cut, I'm like, I can't stand this. I hate how I sound. I felt like I sounded really weird and unnatural. And the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, so I appreciate it. But yeah, I felt like, man, I sound so weird. And I guess that's just part of getting used to hearing yourself talk.
Oh, I believe me. I quit worrying about it. After about the first 1,000, you kind of sit there and kind of go, it doesn't matter. You just have to have fun, get the word out, and really spread the Energy Strong word in the SPI. What's coming up around the corner for Energy Strong?
Well, we're hitting the winter months. We've got some in-person events that we're planning for early next year. We just finished, really the big event we just finished the year with was the Energy Strong Golf Tournament in Colorado. I'm
Nice.
sure we'll do that again next year. So we're working on a few symposium, in-person events, some happy hours. Those have been real successful rallies for the industry. And then we'll see what else kind of we come up with.
Oh, man. And what about SPI? What's coming around the corner for SPI?
SPL.
Sorry, my bad. Sorry.
No worries. What's coming around the corner? Well, we're really excited to launch Clean Connect, and bring that, that's our entry point into the emissions and methane detection space. Yep. And then leveraging that technology and some other strategic opportunities that we have going on right now. We're really excited to continue to pursue our market strategy in that space, and bring some additional services and innovation to our customers as they're looking for solutions to manage their ESG data, their reporting, and other tasks.
How would people, we're going to put all your contact information in the show notes, and we're actually going to transcribe this so people can read it on the road and all those things. Oh, great. We don't want to have any car wrecks or anything. But if they were sitting there and people were wondering about accountability and getting everything done, we'll try to get you all that kind of information and make sure that they get a hold of you and everything else. So we'll also have a way for people to ask you questions and send you information. But Dr. Parker, last word to you. Let us know your last thoughts. And I really appreciate your passion for what we're talking about. It's really
well, I appreciate the invite. And look, I mean, I got to give a plug to your group as well, because you guys have been doing all the promotional work, the teases and all of that we're happy to be partnered with your team as well, and appreciate the support of the podcast, because it has certainly enhanced the delivery the first few episodes. And so can't wait to keep working with you guys on that more and more. We're really excited about where we're headed as a company. Energy Strong is real excited about where we're headed with our advocacy efforts in the next year. And just appreciate the time to talk. And I love talking about anything climate and energy related. As you could probably see, gets me going. So I'd love to talk about it.
I'll tell you what, again, I hope to visit with you again very shortly. Yeah. And don't tell your gang anything that when we're producing and recording, once we get to the video and everything else, we're going to keep blooper reels. So
we were actually talking about that. We definitely already have some good blooper materials. So that will be a lot of fun. I'll look forward to that.
Hey, I'm going to follow up. This is going to air next week, and we will be keeping you posted on everything, and look forward to visiting with you, Andrew. Thank you, Dr. Parker.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. This was fun.